Early in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey makes an astute observation about a time when he was immersed in a study of what he calls the success literature published in the United States since its founding. As he read and scanned hundreds of books and articles, he noticed a pattern. For the first 150 years of our nation, most of the literature saw character as foundational to success. But most of the literature since then had a large change and focus from character to technique as the foundation for success. The chief techniques typically being either human relations techniques or positive thinking. This is a massive shift, and we may not even be aware of it since we have grown up in this era since the shift happened. What we read mostly about success and productivity today has a substantially different emphasis than used to be the case in our society. Now, character is largely disconnected from competence and productivity. It was not always that way, and it's not supposed to be that way. But that may be surprising to us because this is the air we've been breathing for decades. In his book, Character Counts, Os Guinness makes the same observation when it comes to leadership. And of course, leadership is closely related to the issue of personal productivity. He says, whereas a combination of faith, character, and virtue was the rock on which traditional leadership was founded, each of these components has crumbled in the 20th century. What Covey saw and Os Guinness points out represent two fundamentally different ways of viewing productivity and life: the personality ethic and the character ethic. The personality ethic looks mainly at externals as the way to be more productive and effective. How you treat people, what tactics you use to get things done, and what techniques you follow to accomplish your goals. It might sometimes affirm the importance of character, but it sees it as just one ingredient among many and mainly utilitarian, with the mindset often being, yeah, do the right thing because if you don't, it might be bad for business. But then what happens if it's not necessary to do the right thing? Do you still do it? What about recognizing doing the right thing as good in itself, apart from the positive consequences it has? The personality ethic does not give the significant and substantial place to character that all the wisdom literature of human history from any world religion actually has recognized and given to it. Which brings us to the character ethic, which on the other hand looks first at who you are, not just what you do, but first who you are. It says that true success is not first defined by externals, and the way to live an effective life does not come first from your techniques or external measurements like how much money you have, or even how many friends you have on Facebook or followers on Twitter or Instagram. True and lasting effectiveness comes from character, which is not simply one ingredient among many in an effective life, but foundational to it. Without it, nothing else matters. Techniques do have their place, but only coming from a foundation of genuine character. Closely related to this is the distinction between what we can call primary greatness and secondary greatness. Primary greatness is goodness of character. It is being a good person, someone who is honorable and servant-hearted, someone who reflects the character of Christ. That is primary goodness. Secondary goodness is being publicly recognized for your accomplishments. Now, there's nothing wrong with secondary greatness. It is a good thing, and in fact, God will give it to all of his people in heaven and in the new heavens and new earth, and to a certain degree, sometimes now. Secondary greatness has its place. The problem is in our society right now, especially a society that is focused on celebrity and even wealth and external success. Secondary greatness has become the primary, and we assess people's effectiveness in life and worth based on the issues of secondary greatness. And sometimes, very often actually, we end up having merely utilitarian and transactional relationships with people. We see them as important to us if they can bring benefit to us, if they have the right credentials of secondary greatness. And if they don't have that, sometimes we easily look down on them or dismiss them or do not give them proper place and respect. This is a horrible way to act. It does not recognize that far more important than what people do are people themselves. People matter even more than accomplishments and external measures of success. People matter in themselves, not simply for what they can do for us. And there are some parts of the country which are almost entirely based on this transactional mindset. And it is exhausting and it burns people out and it is disrespectful and dishonoring to God. And in the long run, it is not productive because it cannot be sustained. You cannot ultimately divorce character and productivity and expect to keep going. Ultimately, it does not work to sever the fruit from the root. In contrast, goodness of character, that is what matters most and matters first. That's why it's called primary greatness. In fact, true secondary greatness only happens if you have primary greatness. That's simply called integrity. It's hypocrisy. It's an outer shell if you focus on secondary greatness without focusing on primary greatness. Stephen Covey talks about in The 7 Habits how private victory precedes public victory. That is, first, you have to have control of yourself. You have to be a virtuous person before you can go out there into the world and really make a difference for good. There are lots of people trying to make a difference, but without the foundation of character, that will not be a good and lasting difference. This distinction between the character ethic and the personality ethic has its roots right in the scriptures, as well as Greek philosophy and other places. For example, Psalm 1 is all about the productive life. It's amazing, for it talks of a person who is blessed, which is a biblical phrase for the good life. It means happy, the person who is to be congratulated. This is the person who has real success. It's a biblical term for the good life. And it also speaks of this person prospering in all that he does. That's verse 3. The blessedness of this person is most fundamentally a matter of character, according to this psalm. For it says, he is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. This has a great link with Jeremiah 17, 7 through 8 and Proverbs 11, 28 as well. But the point here is this psalm is considering the issue of productivity. This person is prosperous in whatever they do, and it defines this productivity and blessedness first in terms of character. This person meditates on the law of the Lord day and night. They are God-centered. They have character. Their leaf does not wither in times of drought. Likewise, the Apostle Peter speaks of God-centered virtue as the fundamental ingredient for a productive life. It's interesting. He mentions productivity explicitly here. Look at 2 Peter chapter 1, where he lists an impressive number of character qualities culminating in love. And then he says, for if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. In other words, virtue and character are at the root of what it means to live a productive and fruitful life before God. And if we are going to truly be productive and have secondary greatness, we need to first of all seek primary greatness, goodness of character. Now, someone might ask, how in the world does character lead to productivity? I don't see the connection. First, as we have seen, character is itself at the heart of what God requires. And so character in itself, we can say, is productive in the sense it's what God wants from us. It is an intrinsic good, we can call it. Even apart from any results it has, it is good in itself. We are not mere utilitarians as Christians. We recognize that some things are good in themselves, and character is one of those things. So if we have a holistic view of productivity, which we talked about earlier, and realize it's not just about what you get done, it's also about who you are, why you do things, the way you do things. It's about motives and the heart. Because God looks at the heart and everything grows out of the heart, you realize that productivity is in itself productive. And this is why I'm not worried about artificial intelligence taking over jobs and becoming more important than people, because artificial intelligence does not have a heart. It does not have what is most important. Sure, it can do a lot of things well, and it will be doing more and more things well for us, which is great. But it does and always will lack the heart, the emotional side of things. And as we've seen earlier, the heart and the intangibles, the way you relate to people, that's what really makes the difference in life and in our new economy today. Second, character creates productivity because it leads to making the most of our time in the concrete decisions of everyday life, because character is actually the source of our ability to determine what's best next. Character is the source of our ability to determine what's best next. So much of productivity is about making decisions. It's not just about organizing your tasks. It's about deciding which tasks are more important. So many decisions are made by intuition. Yes, we do a lot of analysis, gather a lot of information, but a lot of times the same people will get the same information and even make two very different decisions. Why? Because decisions can't usually be totally made by analysis and information. There is a subjective element that comes into play, your perspective, your view of the world, that is your heart. A lot of business thinkers rightly talk about the importance of trusting your intuition and using your intuition. But the question is, should we always trust our intuition? And a lot of times our intuition is right. It's basically just pattern recognition. But our intuition is coming from somewhere. It's coming from a heart, a worldview. It's not always going to be right. We need to shape our intuition. And that's character. Our intuition is really a reflection of our character. And if our character is poor, that means our decision-making will be poor and will not take all the appropriate factors into account. And it will not recognize the best way to carry things out, especially when we know that how we treat people is central to true productivity. So if you are going to make reliable decisions and your intuition plays a key part in this, you need to shape your intuition so that it will be reliable. And that comes from focusing on your character. Now, of course, this should not be surprising, since we saw in earlier sessions that the golden rule is actually the guiding principle for being productive. In order to put others first, love, therefore, you need to be a loving person, and that's character. Philippians 1:9-10 is a great passage which brings all of this together. It's talking about decision-making, so productivity, and it connects it to love, not just knowledge, but to love. Paul speaks here of approving what is excellent. So that's decision-making, approving what is excellent. And notice right there already the tie to character. You are to approve. So this is going to your heart, intuition, and what is excellent, not just anything. You're making good decisions. And then he mentions love. He says, "It is my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent." So see the connection here. Love plays a part in enabling us to approve what is excellent. That is love. Character, therefore, is central to making good decisions, and therefore central to knowing what's best next and being productive. Wisdom and love, that is character, are therefore at the root of how we make good decisions. This is why you cannot separate character ultimately from productivity, and character actually leads to productivity. Now, how do we develop our character. There are so many ways to build our character and develop our character, and I cannot obviously go into all of them, but two chief foundational ways of growing in character are the scriptures and prayer, because they are fundamental to our walk with God, and God is the one who builds our character. The scriptures shape our character. In order for that to happen, we need to read them, we need to know them, we need to understand them. This is what Psalm 1 says. The righteous person who has good character meditates on God's word day and night. You have to let it fill your mind. Always be thinking about it and seeing how it applies to your situation, to your life. So prayer every day. I recommend first thing in the morning when you get up, having a time in the scriptures and in prayer. Or maybe you need to do that later at night. I don't know. But do it and be consistent with it. As you develop the habit, you become inclined to stick with the habit. So scriptures, and then prayer. Prayer is especially how we commune with God, and you can pray the scriptures back to God. And fascinatingly, Jesus ties prayer to productivity in John 15. We did not choose him, but he chose us that we may go and bear fruit, and that our fruit would remain. And he says, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you, that you may bear much fruit and my Father will be glorified. Jesus ties prayer to productivity. So if you want to be productive, you need to be praying for results, for God-centered results. God is in charge of what happens. And so we will not succeed in our plans the way we really need to if we are leaving him out. There is actually this wonderful connection in the Sermon on the Mount between the golden rule and prayer. It's amazing. It's at the end of Matthew chapter 7, and John Piper has a sermon where he really goes into this, and it's really neat. Jesus first talks about prayer, saying we have a God who delights to give us what we ask. And so we should be persistent in asking, seeking, and knocking. So he's giving us an exhortation to pray. And then after that, he says, so then whatever you wish others would do to you, do so to them. He gives the golden rule right after exhorting us to pray. And the connection there is a so then. What is that so then referring back to? In one sense, it's referring back to the whole sermon. He's summarizing his sermon. In another sense, he's referring back to what he just said, namely prayer. So the connection is this: God is eager to answer prayer. Therefore, treat others the way you want to be treated, which we've seen is the key principle of productivity. In other words, Jesus is saying you are free to treat others the way you want to be treated and take the risks that are involved in doing that, because you have a God who looks out for you. And you can call on him in prayer to look out for you and to help you accomplish good for others. Jesus ties the golden rule to prayer. So be encouraged to follow the golden rule and make it the chief principle of your productivity by the fact that you have a God who is eager to answer your prayers and help you carry out the golden rule in order to reflect his character in the world.